There is a specific, quiet defeat in waking up before the alarm, lying completely still in the dark and waiting for a physical response that you already know is not coming. You stare at the ceiling, feeling the cold emptiness in your body, and you start calculating how to hide it for another day. But what if I told you that the reason your engine is dead in the morning has nothing to do with your age and everything to do with how you are physically locking down your own fuel lines while you sleep? What if getting the pressure back tomorrow morning just required a simple 2-point mechanical adjustment tonight? A lot of men are not broken. They are just ignoring the wrong things. For a massive part of my early 50s, I woke up angry at my own body. I was living out of suitcases, flying back and forth from Phoenix to Dallas and Chicago, managing a regional sales team, and running my life on pure adrenaline. I expected my body to just keep up. I treated it like a company car. I drove it hard. I ignored the warning lights on the dashboard, and I assumed that the engine would just turn over every single time I put the key in the ignition. But biology does not respect your work schedule. The breakdown did not happen violently. It happened in a slow, quiet fade. It started with the mornings. The predictability that I had taken for granted my entire adult life just vanished. I would wake up, and the system was completely flat. At first, I blamed the hotel beds. I blamed the late flights. I told myself I was just carrying too much stress from the quarter-end reports. But then the weeks turned into months, and the months turned into years, and I had to face the reality that my physical response was just gone. When you lose that response, you do not just lose a mechanical function. You lose your footing as a man. During that phase of my life, the phase that ultimately contributed to the end of my first marriage, I did not talk about what was happening. I was too proud. I was the guy who had answers for everyone else, and I had no answers for myself. So I withdrew. I started finding excuses to stay up late. I would sit at the kitchen table answering emails that did not need to be answered, just to make sure she was already asleep when I walked into the bedroom. I was so terrified of facing my own physical failure that I actively destroyed the intimacy in my own house. I chose distance over honesty. I went to the doctors because that is what we are taught to do. I sat in the sterile rooms, answered the uncomfortable questions, and waited for them to fix me. They ran the blood panels. They told me my numbers were a little low, but normal for a guy crossing 50. They handed me a prescription for a pill to force the hydraulic system to work when I needed it, and they sent me out the door. They were treating the smoke. They were not looking at the engine block. I took the pills a few times. They forced the blood into the pipes, but they left me with a pounding headache, a red face, and a deep sinking realization that I was just artificially running a broken machine on red line. I was not fixing the problem. I was just masking the failure. I had to figure the mechanics out on my own. I stopped reading sales projections and started reading about the actual infrastructure of the male body, because I realized something that completely shifted my perspective. The male physical response is not magic. It is not an emotion. It is a strictly mechanical, hydraulic event. It operates on pressure, flow, and unobstructed lines. And more importantly, I learned that the morning response is not just about being ready for intimacy. It is a diagnostic test. When you are asleep, your brain runs a maintenance cycle. It sends signals down the nervous system to test the plumbing, to oxygenate the tissue, and to make sure the pipes are clear. If you are waking up dead, it means the diagnostic test is failing. It means the signals are not getting through, or the blood physically cannot make the journey. I realized I was actively sabotaging my own diagnostic test. I was strangling my own fuel lines while I slept. It took me years of trial, error, and paying attention to my own machinery to figure out how to unblock those lines. It came down to a 2-point trick. 2 mechanical adjustments that I have to make every single night to ensure the engine fires up the next morning. The first point is the thermal downshift. Think about how you park a car. If you have been driving a high-performance engine hard all day, running it hot on the highway, you do not pull it into a tight-sealed garage and immediately throw a tarp over it. The engine needs to cool down. The heat has to dissipate. But look at how we treat our bodies. I used to work right up until 11 at night. I would close my laptop, my brain still buzzing with cortisol and stress hormones, and I would get straight into bed under heavy blankets. My internal temperature was running hot. My nervous system was still locked in a state of high alert. When your body is running hot and stressed, your blood vessels physically constrict. They clamp down. Your body thinks it is under attack, so it restricts the flow of blood to the extremities and the lower body, keeping it all in the core to protect the vital organs. If you go to sleep in that state, your pipes are clamped shut for 8 hours. The brain sends the diagnostic signal in the middle of the night, but the blood simply cannot flow through tight pipes. I had to learn how to force the thermal downshift. Now, exactly 90 minutes before I want to be asleep, I get into a hot shower. Not warm, hot. I stay in there for 10 minutes. What this does is draw all the blood from the deep core of the body out to the surface of the skin. When I step out of that hot shower into a cool room, my core body temperature plummets rapidly. That sudden drop in temperature is the exact biological signal your nervous system needs to kill the cortisol. It flips the switch from high alert to deep rest. The electrical grid powers down. And most importantly, the blood vessels finally relax and open up. You are taking the clamps off the fuel lines before you even get into bed. The second point is the structural release. This was the piece that took me the longest to understand, but it is the most critical. You can have the most relaxed blood vessels in the world, but if you are physically standing on the garden hose, the water is not going to flow. For men, that garden hose runs directly through a hammock of muscle at the base of the pelvis. Every major artery, every vital nerve that controls your lower body has to pass through the pelvic floor. I spent 30 years sitting in office chairs and airplane seats. That muscle was tight, short, and inflamed. And when I slept, I used to sleep curled up on my side or flat on my stomach, which keeps that pelvic floor locked in a state of tension all night long. I was physically kinking my own supply line. I changed my sleeping architecture. I started sleeping flat on my back, but that was not enough. The tension in the lower back still pulled on the pelvis. So I took a heavy, firm pillow and I placed it directly under the back of my knees. When you elevate the knees even just a few inches, you change the physical tilt of your pelvis. You take the mechanical load off the lower spine, and immediately that tight hammock of muscle at the base of your body goes slack. It drops. The physical tension releases. By simply placing a pillow under my knees, I unkinked the primary fuel line to my lower body. It sounds too simple to be the answer to a problem that was destroying my confidence. But you have to respect the mechanics. When I combined the thermal downshift to open the vessels with the structural release to unkink the hose, the environment completely changed. The first few nights, I just noticed that I slept deeper. My lower back did not ache in the morning. But about 2 weeks into this 2-point routine, the shift happened. I woke up and the room was quiet, but my body was not. The predictability was back. The physical response that I had assumed was gone forever, the response the doctors told me I needed a pill to achieve, was just there. It was strong. It was undeniable. It was not forced by anxiety or prescription. It was just the natural heavy result of a hydraulic system that finally had clear, unobstructed lines to do its job. The confidence comes back when the body starts to respond again. When I met Alyssa, my life was entirely different. She is 9 years younger than me, a former interior design consultant, and a woman who refuses to live in a house with unspoken tension. She reads me instantly. If I had brought the silent, defensive, broken man I was in my early 50s into this marriage, we would not have survived the first year. But because I understand my machinery now, there is no silence. There are nights where the stress of a contract or a bad week starts to wind my nervous system up. I can feel the old tension pulling tight in my core. Instead of hiding from her, I just look at her and tell her the engine is running too hot today. I do not apologize for it. I just go take my shower, I do my thermal downshift, I set up my structural release, and I go to sleep. And the next morning, the system fires up perfectly. You do not have to live in fear of your own failure when you know how to manage the pressure. I was sitting in my kitchen with my son Ethan a few weeks ago. He is 31, grinding his way through the commercial real estate world. I watched him answering emails on his phone while he drank his coffee, his shoulders up around his ears, his jaw tight. I told him he was driving a rental car and treating it like it belonged to someone else. I told him that his youth is the only thing pushing the blood through those tight pipes right now. But I warned him that the elasticity fades. If he does not learn how to downshift his engine and unkink his lines at night, he's going to wake up in 20 years feeling like half a man. You cannot out-hustle bad plumbing. You have to do the maintenance. Look, I am 63 years old. I do not have the unthinking, chaotic energy I had at 30. And I do not want it. What I have is control. What I have is consistency. I have an engine that runs clean and lines that stay open because I know exactly how to prep the machine for the night. If you are waking up staring at the ceiling, feeling that cold, hollow space where your vitality used to be, stop assuming the game is over. You are not uniquely broken. You are just clamping your own lines shut. Tonight, stop looking at your screens right up until you close your eyes. Force the thermal downshift. Drop the core temperature. Take the tension off the pelvic floor. Unkink the hose. Give your body the mechanical clearance it needs to run its diagnostic test. The mechanisms that make you feel like a man are usually still there, buried under tension and restricted flow. When you clear the lines, the factory knows exactly what to do. The flow is everything. Once you get the flow back, the rest of the man comes back with it. We are going to keep unpacking this. There are a lot of small mechanical choices that dictate how we run on the back half of the journey. Keep paying attention to the infrastructure. I will see you in the next one.